The moment she laughed at my dreams was the moment I decided to prove her devastatingly wrong. I will never forget that sound. That cruel, cutting laughter that sliced through my heart like a razor blade on that Tuesday evening in October. I had just shared the most vulnerable piece of my soul with someone I trusted completely, and she destroyed it in 3 seconds flat. My name is Jenna Caldwell, and I was 34 years old when my entire world shifted on its axis. I had been working in marketing for 8 grueling years, sitting in the same gray cubicle, staring at the same beige walls, feeling my creative spirit slowly suffocating under the weight of corporate mediocrity. Every morning, I would drag myself out of bed, put on another ill-fitting blazer from the limited selection available for women like me, and pretend that this was enough. But it was not enough. Not even close. Late at night, when the world was quiet and my thoughts could finally breathe, I would pull out my secret sketchbook, page after page filled with designs that made my heart race with possibility. Wrap dresses that would actually wrap around real curves. Blazers cut for women who had hips and breasts and lives that demanded both style and comfort. Clothes for women who were tired of being an afterthought in an industry that seemed to forget we existed. I had been saving every penny from my marketing salary for 2 years. $27,000 sat in my savings account, burning a hole in my pocket and my conscience. I had the vision. I had the passion. I had the burning desire to create something that mattered. All I needed was someone to believe in me. So I called Victoria. Victoria Chen had been my best friend since college. We had weathered breakups together, celebrated promotions together, and shared countless bottles of wine while dreaming about the futures we would build. She was successful, confident, and brutally honest. If anyone would give me the reality check I needed, it would be her. We met at our usual spot, a trendy wine bar downtown where the lighting was dim enough to hide my nervous sweating, and the wine was strong enough to give me courage. I had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Victoria, I began, my voice trembling with excitement and terror. I have something incredible to tell you. I am going to start my own fashion label. The words hung in the air between us like a confession. I have been designing clothes for real women. Women like us. Women who are tired of being ignored by an industry that thinks we do not exist unless we are a size 2. I have the savings, I have the designs, and I have the fire in my belly to make this happen. I pulled out my sketchbook with hands that shook slightly from adrenaline. Look at these, Victoria. Really look at them. These are clothes that would make women feel beautiful and confident and seen. This is not just about fashion. This is about changing lives. And that is when she laughed. Not a polite chuckle. Not a nervous giggle. A full-throated, head-thrown-back laugh that echoed through the wine bar and landed on my dreams like a sledgehammer. Jenna, she said, wiping tears from her eyes as if I had just told her the funniest joke she had ever heard. You are not 25 anymore. You are not even a fashion designer. Be serious. The words hit me like physical blows. This is cute, she continued, barely glancing at my sketches. Really cute. But impossible. Absolutely impossible. You are comfortable where you are. You have a good job, decent benefits, and stability. Why would you throw that away for some fantasy? She took another sip of her wine, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just shattered something precious inside me. The fashion industry is brutal, Jenna. Do you have any idea how many people try to break into it every single day? And most of them are young, connected, and have trust funds. You are a marketing manager from Ohio. Come back to reality. I sat there in stunned silence, feeling my cheeks burn with humiliation, and my eyes fill with tears I refused to let fall. This was the woman I had trusted with my deepest secrets, my biggest fears, and my wildest dreams. And she had just dismissed everything that mattered to me like it was nothing more than a silly daydream. I just think, she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone that people use when they think they are being kind, that you should focus on being grateful for what you have instead of chasing after something that will probably just leave you broke and embarrassed. I nodded mutely, closed my sketchbook, and made polite conversation for the rest of the evening. But inside, something had fundamentally changed. She had called my dreams impossible, and I was about to prove her devastatingly wrong. That night, I went home to my small apartment and stood in front of my bathroom mirror for a long time. The woman staring back at me had been playing it safe for 34 years. She had been accepting other people's limitations as her own reality. She had been shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never designed for her in the first place. But not anymore. I walked into my guest bedroom and looked around at the chaos I had been hiding from the world. Fabric samples covered every surface. Fashion magazines were stacked in towering piles. My sewing machine sat in the corner like a faithful friend, waiting for me to be brave enough to use it properly. This was not a cute hobby. This was my calling. And Victoria's laughter had just lit a fire under me that would burn for years to come. I spent that entire night researching everything I could about starting a fashion business. I read success stories and failure stories. I studied supply chains and manufacturing processes. I researched fabric sourcing and pattern making and marketing strategies until my eyes burned and my head pounded. But I did not stop. For the next 6 months, I lived a double life. By day, I went to my marketing job and smiled politely at meetings and pretended that my heart was still in it. By night, I transformed into someone I barely recognized. I taught myself to sew properly by watching YouTube tutorials until 2 in the morning. I studied pattern making like I was preparing for the most important exam of my life. I read every book about garment construction I could get my hands on. I learned about different fabric weights and draping techniques and fit adjustments. My guest room became my sanctuary. I cleared out every piece of furniture except for a large cutting table I built myself and my grandmother's old sewing machine that I had inherited years earlier. The walls became covered with inspiration boards, technical sketches, and fabric swatches organized by color and weight. I started with simple pieces. A wrap dress that actually wrapped properly around curves. A blazer with princess seams that created a flattering silhouette, instead of the boxy shapes that seemed to be the only option for women above a size 12. A pair of wide-leg trousers with a comfortable elastic waistband that somehow still looked sophisticated and professional. Every evening after work, I would race home, change into my old clothes, and lose myself in the rhythm of cutting and pinning and stitching. There was something deeply meditative about the process. Something that quieted the voice in my head that whispered Victoria's words over and over again. Impossible. Cute. Fantasy. But as the months passed, those words began to lose their power over me. Because I was creating something real. My first customer was my coworker Sarah, who had admired a wrap dress I wore to the office one day. When I told her I had made it myself, her eyes went wide with disbelief. "You made this?" she asked, touching the fabric reverently. "This is better than anything I can find in stores. Would you make one for me?" That first sale was for $60. I probably spent $40 on materials and worked for 12 hours to complete it. But when Sarah wore that dress to work the following week and 3 other women asked where she had gotten it, I knew I was onto something. Word spread quickly through my office building. Women who had been struggling to find professional clothes that fit properly suddenly had an option. I started taking measurements in empty conference rooms during lunch breaks. I created a simple order form and began keeping track of requests in a spreadsheet. Within 2 months, I had a waiting list of 20 women. I was exhausted, exhilarated, and completely addicted to the feeling of creating something that mattered. But I knew I needed to think bigger. I spent my evenings researching online marketplaces and social media strategies. I created an Instagram account and started posting photos of my designs on a friend who was willing to model for me. I opened an Etsy shop and listed my first 3 designs with professional photos I took in my living room using natural light and a white sheet as a backdrop. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My wrap dress sold out in 24 hours. My blazer had a waiting list of 50 women within a week. And then something magical happened. A plus-size fashion blogger with 30,000 followers discovered my shop and featured my designs in a post about hidden gems for curvy women. The post went viral in the body-positive community, and suddenly my tiny Etsy shop was getting hundreds of visitors every day. Orders were pouring in faster than I could possibly fulfill them working alone in my guest room. I was staying up until 3 in the morning every night, cutting patterns and sewing seams and packaging orders with handwritten thank you notes. I was running on pure adrenaline and determination. And then my website crashed. It was a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 5 months after Victoria had laughed at my dreams. I was getting ready for work when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Email after email from customers asking why they could not access my shop. Messages from women who had been waiting weeks for their orders and were worried I had disappeared. I called the Etsy customer service line with shaking hands and was told that my shop had received so much traffic overnight that it had triggered their automatic security protocols. They were reviewing my account to make sure I was not running some kind of scam. I hung up the phone and sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Not from frustration or exhaustion, though I was drowning in both. I cried from pure, overwhelming joy. Because in that moment, I realized that the impossible was already happening. I called in sick to work and spent the entire day on the phone with Etsy support, explaining my business and providing documentation to prove that I was legitimate. By evening, my shop was back online, and I had sold another 40 pieces. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to quit my job. I was going to bet everything on myself. I was going to turn Victoria's laughter into the soundtrack of my success. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office and gave my 2 weeks' notice. He tried to convince me to stay, offering me a raise and a promotion I had been hoping for just months earlier. But nothing could have kept me in that gray cubicle when I had tasted what it felt like to build something of my own. With my marketing background, I knew I needed a brand name that would resonate with my target audience. Something that captured the feeling of transformation and growth that my clothes represented. I chose Emerge. Because that is exactly what I was doing. Emerging from the limitations other people had placed on me. Emerging from the safety of mediocrity. Emerging as the woman I was always meant to be. I used my savings to rent a small studio space in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of downtown. It was not glamorous. The floors were concrete, the lighting was harsh fluorescent, and the heating system made concerning noises. But it was mine. I invested in professional equipment. Industrial sewing machines that could handle heavy fabrics and high-volume production. A cutting table large enough to lay out multiple pattern pieces at once. Professional dress forms in the full range of sizes I designed for. Most importantly, I hired help. My first employee was Maria, a seamstress who had been laid off from a factory closing and was looking for steady work. She was in her 50s, had been sewing for 30 years, and could construct a garment with a precision that made my amateur efforts look embarrassing by comparison. But she believed in what I was building. I have been waiting my whole career to work for someone who designs clothes for real women, she told me during her interview. This is not just a job for me. This is a mission. Within 6 months, Maria and I were working 12-hour days and still could not keep up with demand. We hired 2 more seamstresses, then 3 more. We created systems for pattern cutting and quality control. We established relationships with fabric suppliers who could provide consistent materials in the quantities we needed. And the orders kept coming. Fashion bloggers were featuring our pieces regularly. Magazines were reaching out for interviews. Women were tagging us in social media posts, sharing photos of themselves wearing our clothes to job interviews and first dates and important meetings. But the moment I knew we had really made it came 18 months after I had quit my corporate job. I was working late in the studio, reviewing production schedules and inventory reports, when my phone buzzed with a notification. A major fashion industry publication wanted to feature Emerge in their annual Brands to Watch issue. The photo shoot was scheduled for the following month in New York City. They wanted to feature our signature wrap dress alongside pieces from established designers whose names I had been reading in magazines for years. I sat in my concrete-floored studio, surrounded by bolts of fabric and the hum of sewing machines, and realized that I had built something extraordinary. But the real validation came from our customers. Women were writing to us every day, sharing stories about how our clothes had changed their lives. A recent divorcee who had gotten her first job interview in 10 years wearing our blazer. A new mother who felt beautiful in her postpartum body for the first time in our wrap dress. A woman who had lost 100 pounds and was learning to dress her new body with our guidance and designs. We were not just selling clothes. We were selling confidence. We were selling the feeling of being seen and valued and beautiful exactly as you are. And then 2 years after I had started Emerge, something happened that I will never forget. I was in Chicago for a trade show, meeting with buyers from boutique stores across the Midwest. Our line was being carried in over 200 stores nationwide, and we had a waiting list for new collections that stretched for months. As I was walking through the convention center, I saw a massive billboard advertising Fashion Week events in New York. And there, among images of established designers and luxury brands, was a photo from our latest campaign. A beautiful woman wearing our signature wrap dress, with the Emerge logo prominently displayed at the bottom. I stood on that busy sidewalk, staring up at my company's billboard, and felt something shift inside my chest. This was not impossible anymore. This was reality. That evening, I was back in my hotel room when my phone buzzed with a direct message on Instagram. It was from Victoria. Saw your billboard in Times Square today. Wow. You are absolutely killing it. Always knew you would make it big. I stared at that message for a long time. Always knew you would. Funny how memory works, is it not? I could have responded with anger. I could have reminded her of that evening in the wine bar when she had laughed at my dreams and called them impossible. I could have sent her screenshots of the articles that had been written about my success, the interviews I had given about overcoming doubt and criticism. But instead, I simply hearted her message and moved on. Because her opinion no longer mattered to me. What mattered was the empire I had built from her doubt. The next year brought opportunities one could never have imagined when I was sitting in that gray cubicle, dreaming of something more. We were invited to show at New York Fashion Week. Not in some tiny basement venue, but in a legitimate show space with professional models and industry press. I stood backstage, watching women of all sizes walk down the runway wearing clothes I had designed, and felt my heart nearly burst with pride. We launched an online platform that allowed women to input their measurements and receive personalized fit recommendations. We created a community where customers could share styling tips and support each other's fashion journeys. We started a scholarship program for women entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own fashion businesses. And then came the invitation that felt like the ultimate vindication. A Women's Entrepreneur Summit had asked me to be their keynote speaker. The event was focused on breaking barriers in male-dominated industries, and they wanted me to share my story of building a successful fashion brand from scratch. When I received the agenda, I saw that Victoria was listed as the moderator for the panel discussion that would follow my keynote. The irony was not lost on me. I spent weeks preparing that speech. Not because I needed to prove anything to Victoria specifically, but because I wanted to honor every woman who had ever been told her dreams were impossible. The day of the summit, I stood in the wings of a theater filled with 500 ambitious women, wearing a custom blazer from my latest collection. My hands were steady, my voice was strong, and my message was crystal clear. I walked to the podium, looked out at the audience, and spotted Victoria in the front row. She was smiling at me with what looked like genuine pride, as if she had played some positive role in my success. I was told once that my dreams were impossible. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the theater. I am here today to thank that person, because nothing fuels a woman like being underestimated. The audience erupted in applause, and I saw Victoria's smile falter slightly as she realized what I was really saying. I spent the next 45 minutes sharing every detail of my journey. The late nights in my guest room. The crashed website that made me realize I was onto something big. The decision to bet everything on myself when everyone else thought I was crazy. But I also talked about the women who had supported me. Maria, my first employee, who had believed in the mission from day one. The customers who had shared their stories and trusted us with their most important moments. The fashion bloggers who had taken a chance on an unknown brand because they believed in what we represented. I talked about the responsibility that comes with success. How building a business is not just about personal achievement, but about creating opportunities for others. How Emerge now employed over 200 women, many of them single mothers, immigrants, and women starting over after major life changes. And I talked about the power of proving people wrong. When someone tells you your dreams are impossible, I said, looking directly at Victoria, they are really telling you about the limitations of their own imagination. Do not let their fear become your reality. The standing ovation lasted for 3 minutes. During the panel discussion that followed, Victoria asked me thoughtful questions about scaling a business and managing growth. She was professional and gracious, and if you did not know our history, you would have thought she had been my biggest supporter from the beginning. After the event, she approached me at the reception. "Jenna," she said, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about everything. What you have built is incredible, and I am genuinely proud of you." I looked at this woman who had once held so much power over my self-confidence, and I felt nothing but pity for her. "Thank you," I said simply. "I appreciate that." Because what else was there to say? Her apology could not change the fact that I had built my empire in spite of her, not because of her. Her recognition could not undo the months of self-doubt I had worked through after that evening in the wine bar. But it did feel good to hear. Today, Emerge is a multi-million-dollar fashion brand with a cult following of women who finally feel seen and valued by the fashion industry. We have retail locations in 12 cities, a thriving online platform, and partnerships with major department stores. Our latest collection sold out in 4 hours. We have a waiting list of over 10,000 women for our next launch. And every single day, I receive messages from customers telling me how our clothes have changed their lives. But the success metrics that matter most to me are not financial. We employ over 200 women in our design studios, manufacturing facilities, and retail locations. 60% of our employees are women of color. 40% are single mothers. 20% are women over 50 who had been told they were too old to start over in new careers. We have donated over $500,000 to organizations that support women entrepreneurs. We have mentored hundreds of women who want to start their own fashion businesses. We have created a scholarship fund that sends 1 woman per year to fashion design school with full tuition coverage. And we have proven that there is a massive market for clothes designed by women, for women, with women's real lives and bodies in mind. Every season, I design pieces that solve problems I once faced myself. Professional wear that looks polished, but feels comfortable enough to wear for 12-hour days. Evening wear that flatters curves instead of hiding them. Casual pieces that make you feel put together without requiring hours of styling. But more than anything, we design clothes that make women feel powerful. Because that is what this was always about. Not proving Victoria wrong, though that felt pretty satisfying. Not building a successful business, though I am proud of what we have accomplished. This was about proving to myself that I did not have to accept other people's limitations as my reality. This was about showing other women that impossible is just an opinion, not a fact. This was about creating something that mattered in a world that often makes women feel invisible. And as for Victoria, she buys every single collection we release. She tags us in her social media posts, showing off her latest Emerge pieces with captions about supporting women-owned businesses and investing in quality fashion. She talks about me at parties, telling people about her friend who started that amazing fashion company. She has rewritten our history in her mind, casting herself as the supportive friend who always believed in my dreams. And honestly, I let her. Because holding on to anger about her initial reaction would only diminish the joy I feel about what I have built. Because success is not about proving other people wrong. It is about proving yourself right. Because the woman who laughed at my dreams no longer has any power over the woman I have become. But sometimes late at night when I am working on new designs in my studio, I think about that evening in the wine bar. I think about how close I came to believing her. How easily I could have let her laughter silence the voice inside me that whispered, "Try anyway." And I am grateful. Not for her doubt, but for my decision to transform it into fuel. Not for her laughter, but for my choice to turn it into determination. Not for her limitations, but for my refusal to accept them as my own. Every woman who wears our clothes carries a piece of that story with her. Every time she looks in the mirror and feels beautiful and confident and powerful, she is proving that impossible is just a word people use when they cannot imagine a different reality. And every time someone tells her that her dreams are too big, too crazy, too impossible, I hope she remembers this story. I hope she remembers that the most extraordinary things happen when ordinary women decide to stop listening to other people's fears and start listening to their own hearts. I hope she remembers that being underestimated is not a limitation. It is a superpower. And I hope she uses it to build something extraordinary. because the world needs what she has to offer. Even if she is the only one who believes it right now. Especially then. If this story inspired you to chase your own impossible dreams, please subscribe to our channel for more stories of women who refuse to take no for an answer. Your support means everything to us, and together, we can prove that impossible is just the starting point for extraordinary.